with Katrina Pearson, Tammy Bruce and Matt Schlapp. Big questions on our agenda tonight, and we want answers. Where's the money for the border wall? Why is Mitch McConnell blocking one of President Trump's biggest achievements? Who are the swamp creatures inside the White House? Plus, we'll bring you the best takedown of identity politics, gender activism you've ever seen. But first, the passing of President Bush. I was reading all the various reporting on this, and I just wanted to make one point very directly to you. The thing that really got me, actually, amongst all of this, was the personal reflections. First, a report of James Baker when he was with President Bush just a couple of days ago and walked in, and he perked up, President Bush perked up and said, "Where are we going, Bake?" And he said, "We're going to heaven." And he said, "That's where I want to go." And then the second, which others have talked about too, his final words, President George W. Bush called him and said, "You've been a great dad, and I love you, Dad." And he said, "I love you too." And those were his final words. I just think amongst all this politics, in the end, it's those personal things, family, friends, that matter most. But I'm afraid we do have the politics. We do have people, and I've seen it in the last 24 plus hours, literally, as I said earlier, using this to make political points. I've seen it in the New York Times and MSNBC. This is what's going on. Let's bring in our guest to talk about all that. Trump 2020 senior advisor Katrina Pearson, American Conservative Union Chairman Matt Schlapp, and Fox News contributor and the president of Independent Women's Voice, Tammy Bruce. Matt, you first time on the show. Great to see you.
Good to be here, Steve.
Take your pick. Just what are your thoughts? I would like your thoughts, not just on President Bush, but on the way that it's immediately being turned into a political issue.
Well, some of us have been gulping a bit with all the coverage of John McCain, who most conservatives fought with almost his entire career in the Senate when he ran for president. And I think it's interesting because there was a lot of talk about John McCain being almost like the most quintessential Republican. Mm-hmm. I actually, now that you see the passing of 41, what I choose to focus on is to not watch all that crazy coverage. Right. But I choose to focus on two things. He was a good and decent man.
Yes.
And he was committed to things that I care about. And he was a loyal vice president to Ronald Reagan. And he was there right by his side and did what the president wanted him to do. And I think he taught me as a young man lessons on how to be a man. And so if his most important part in politics is that he helped a generation of young people see that public service is noble, and it's good to be decent, and to care about your family and your friends, and to show the nation how to do it, I'm all for that coverage.
Tammy?
Yeah, what's interesting, I think a lot of people don't know, is that the Bush family itself has been involved in the raising up of America since the Revolutionary War. There's been a Bush involved in every significant part of the progress of this country. And you may disagree with him politically, of course, but I think that's a family that, and we can use his son as an example. When George W. Bush left office, he would very quietly go and he would constantly greet the troops back when they would get back to the airport in Texas, and shake their hands and say thank you. This is when he was a private citizen. The Bush family, while they of course are very public, clearly have a legacy of genuinely caring. We might disagree sometimes on which roads lead to Rome and how to get there, but I think that overall people love that family. They know what their intentions are, and yet when we see the reaction to his passing, it is a reminder of what we don't want to become. And even though you can disagree with people, this is, I think, family is a very good example of this. You can disagree with them politically, but still admire them, still want to work to make a difference in a different way. And I think the Bush family is probably going to continue to be that kind of a beacon for the country.
Katrina, I mean, why can't it all, just thoughtful, respectful reflections, why can't it just be left there instead of then going on, as I've seen all around the place, to say, and what a contrast with President Trump? That's what you've been hearing elsewhere.
Well, of course. I mean, it's Trump. I agree with Tammy and Matt on what we're seeing and experience and how great the Bush family has been throughout the years. During the campaign, at that time, candidate Trump was very critical of W's policies, but whenever he spoke of his father, he was very respectful and always spoke and often about how much he respected Bush the father. And so I think that here we are again today. The media takes every opportunity that they can to try and not just trash Trump, but completely disrespect the fact that he is president. And when you have an opportunity like this to compare and contrast, the way previous presidents have handled things, Donald Trump is completely different. And it's because of past administrations that we have Donald Trump, and they won't even respect that. Anytime they have an opportunity to demean, to try and paint him as a horrible person in the public by either comparing him or just making up things about him, they'll take the opportunity, even in a time where a lot of the country is mourning today.
That's right, exactly. I'm going to leave it there because very well said, and thank you to all of you for your reflections. I'll make a very sharp turn because, his whole life was in, we say public service, politics was a lot of it, and that is argument over real things, and there's a very real thing. We talked about it at the top of our show last week, and the situation is still going on down at the border. There's still the crisis. And I had a member of Congress on last week, and I said, there's a simple question that everyone's asking, like, where's the border wall? Where's the money for the border wall? And you get a sort of slippery answer. And we had a member of the House, I've done a bill, but the Senate won't pass it. And then the senators say, we'd pass it, the Democrats won't do it. What's going on, Katrina?
Well, look, Republicans failed the president early on. They should have gave him the money for the bill when they passed their package called the Omnibus that the president was not happy about. This was a priority. This is something the president campaigned on. Republicans should have delivered that to him early on. It's going to be more difficult now. And the president has called it every single time that he has said something was going to happen if we didn't do X, Y, or Z. And guess what? It happens. Even though you have CNN's Jim Acosta fighting with the president at a press conference, essentially saying that he's not seeing what he's seeing. And then now we have another crisis on our hands.
Yeah.
And we have the media taking another advantage, pretending like this has never happened before, again, to paint this president as a really mean and bad person, when really he's just trying to keep
the only
America
thing
safe.
that they prefer is going on about Russia, which we are not going to do here. Exactly, that's a Russia-free zone. So, Tammy, look, the reason I go on about the wall is because if you had that, you wouldn't have the people coming, the caravans, the terrible humanitarian conditions at the border, which we all regret. All of that because you wouldn't have the incentive.
That's right. And what you also wouldn't have is the chaos that keeps everyone distracted and is not looking at maybe other specific things that Congress is doing, allows for partisan arguments on both sides to keep people divided. It almost serves as the perfect distraction to keep Americans from noticing the nature of the condition of Congress. Here's one thing I know. Somehow, Barack Obama found $150 billion to give to Iran.
Right.
We don't know if there was a printer or if it came from some hologram machine. They found $150 billion to give to a terrorist sponsoring nation, as our State Department recognizes it, but they can't quite find $5 billion for the wall.
I know, and I looked at the thing. It's 0.42% of the discretionary budget, 0.7% of the defense budget. I mean, Matt.
Look, there's two things here. The first is there's no question that a wall would help things. Number one, it sends the message loud and clear about how serious we are.
Yeah.
That if you want to apply to be a refugee or an asylee, you have to go to an embassy, you have to go to a port of entry. There's a way to do this. But I think for Republicans, I agree with Katrina's characterization of congressional Republicans. It's one of the reasons why they don't have a majority in the House anymore.
Right.
Because they don't take these parts of the agenda seriously. But there's another piece to this, which is I actually think it's helping the Republicans. When they see this caravan, which I believe can't possibly just be a coincidence, everybody got on some corner in Guatemala and all came up 5,000 strong together. I think it's really shining a light on the fact that Donald Trump was right with much of what he talked about our illegal immigration crisis, and we better solve it.
The reaction, though, the Republicans' refusal, and I think it's a refusal to help with the funding of the wall, even though, as Katrina noted, they should have expected it. It's what he campaigned on. It's what he won on. But they also campaigned for several cycles and won on several cycles, promising to repeal and replace Obamacare. Yeah. So it has been this season of a generation of Republicans lying to people to get their votes and to get their donations. Now, this is Republican leadership, decisions in that regard. There's a lot of individual Republicans who want to change that, absolutely. But, of course, this is no different. Donald Trump is the man of action. He is the man who has an idea and is a builder, expects it to be implemented, and that's what we have to expect.